All right, everybody, what's going on? This is Vinny Maletti with Maletti Law, the strongest name in law. The day is September 7th, 2021. This is part 3 of our series of an anatomy of a disability discrimination claim. This is part 3. This is that checklist that I wanted to give you, that as you're going through your analysis, you kind of like hit every one of these points on your checklist to kind of determine where you are in your case, right? How strong your claim is going to be, whatever the case is. This video is not going to give you specifics on the law. This video is just going to give you what I think you need to do as a layperson to prepare your case, the questions you need to ask yourself on how you need to be approaching this, and the best way to determine if you really have a viable case or not for disability discrimination, or discrimination in general, right? This could kind of go any other way. I'm using disability discrimination in this matter because that's what we've been talking about for these past other 2 videos, but certainly, you could use this in a variety of ways. So without further ado, let's just go into the checklist. Please subscribe in the box below, okay? I told you from last week, we're having like a lot of crazy going on because we're making a big noise on a lot of things. So we're getting videos shut down, we're getting all kinds of things shut down. So please subscribe to the page, please subscribe to the newsletter. I need you to take these. I need you to take these steps because God forbid something happens. We're not, we need to stay connected. So that's the whole point of that. All right. So without further ado, let me just go through them. So your part 1 of your checklist is going to be going through your organization's leadership and accountability, right? So basically, in other words, does the leadership in your organization establish a culture of respect for situations such as discrimination or whatever? That's really what we're talking about here. So does the leadership in your organization establish a culture of respect for discrimination, that it's not tolerated and steps taken? I'm very sorry. I get a lot of text messages here going. You'll hear beeps. My text messages run nonstop, literally 24/7. So okay, so basically you want to ask yourself, has leadership allocated sufficient resources to prevent discrimination? Has leadership allocated sufficient time, staff time, to inspect and to teach ahead of time to prevent discrimination? Has leadership assessed discrimination risk factors in the company? Have they looked at certain things? Has leadership taken a moment to look at certain situations that may give rise to discrimination in the future? So I don't know, let's just say, for instance, there's a culture that's pervasive in the company that there's a lot of discriminatory comment being screamed back and forth by people. That's probably something leadership wants to address, based on what components, based on the commitment of leadership. We want to ask ourselves at that point a couple of questions concerning how leadership implements these policies, right? So we want to say, is the policy that's preferred by leadership easy to understand and regularly communicated to all the employees? Basically, has it been presented to you at some point in the past? Is it easy to understand? Is it written in plain English? Do employees understand how the system works, the reporting system that every company has, how they do it internally, if there is one, if there isn't one? The imposition of discipline, who gets disciplined, who doesn't, how they impose discipline. Is it a 3-step system? Is it items that are so egregious you're going to be terminated, whatever the case is? How they implement the disciplinary measures in the company. Accountability, who's accountable for certain acts, who's accountable for the bad environment, who's accountable for let's say a culture that's not conducive for fairness, a culture that is discriminatory in nature, who's the accountable party. And regular compliance trainings for both employees and managers, that's critical. So we want to make sure that leadership is also implementing regular trainings for both entry level and manager, day-to-day employees and managers. That's also critical. We want to sometimes, other things we can look at is, does the organization conduct surveys of the climate and culture of the organization? Hey, how do you employees feel about this organization? Do you feel we could be doing better? Do you feel we could be doing worse? Whatever, what's your feel in your day-to-day living situation over here? Certain workplace sensitivity training, workplace civility training, bystander intervention training, things like that. Again, we're going back to, does the organization conduct this kind of training? Training is going to be critical. Also, what strategic resources the company is partnering with. So for instance, let's say your training is done internally, or let's say it's done by a third party. That's a strategic that's like a strategic partnership that your company will work with. Who's your LMS, your learning management system, whatever the case is. So that's all important. So the second part is to look at your anti-discrimination policy. We've had this in the past, we've spoken about it. Every employer should have an employee handbook, should have policies to speak to this. Some do, some don't. I would caution heavily against those that don't. But make sure that there's a policy. Look at your company's policy. Is it written in an easy to understand method? Is it unequivocal? Is there a clear statement that says we are a non-discriminatory employer? That's going to be big. Is there a reporting system? That's going to be big. You got to make sure, employers will be best served to have a reporting system, who you report to on the chain, discriminatory practices, whether the reporting system provides a prompt, thorough, and impartial investigation, if there's any structure regarding that reporting system, if the statement, whatever it is, if that particular anti-discrimination statement identifies an individual, identifies the kind of investigation they're going to be doing, if it assures the employee that it's going to be confidential, or if it's going to be one-on-one directly, or if they should maybe speak to somebody first and then speak to the party that's actually discriminated against them, maybe want to push them first, whatever the case is. Is there a retaliation statement, an anti-retaliatory statement that, if you do report this discrimination, you won't be retaliated against? Above all, I've mentioned this, it's probably the fourth time I've mentioned this, but above all, it's got to be written in clear, simple words. It's got to be written in a language that's commonly used by all the members of the workforce. And if it's written in this unusual language, then, it's going to be construed against the employer. So it needs to be written in a language that's the workforce is familiar with and that it's comfortable with. So you always want to make sure that's the case. There's a portion of this that talks about the reporting system. You want to check that off the box. Again, the reporting system is big because if in the case law, and I know I said I wouldn't talk about the law, but in the case law, the question becomes whether or not did they exhaust their internal remedies, right? So did the employee report up the chain? Did they report who they're supposed to report to? Whatever the case is. So that's an important key. That's an important factor. If there's some kind of reporting system for investigations, is this reporting system fully resourced? Does the employer actually allocate resources to it? We mentioned that in the first portion with leadership. Do their employees take the reports seriously? You could be the greatest. You could have the greatest reporting system with all the money in the world, but if your employees don't take it seriously because your culture is lax, then that's going to be a problem. Are your investigators well trained? Are they objective? Are they required to have timely responses to your questions from deadlines, 10 days for an investigation, 2 weeks for an investigation, whatever the case may be? Are there mechanisms that determine whether these employees who are filing reports are actually real, authentic reports? They're actually not just employees who are just pissed about something, but legitimately, they've suffered discrimination, not just, Sarah, went out to go get a drink and whatever, Bob only invited Sarah and didn't invite Jennifer, like something stupid like that. But it's got to be legitimate, authentic reporting. For instance, the kind of communications that are delivered between the parties back and forth, are the communications appropriate? Are they comprehensive? Are they inviting more questions? Are they inviting more of an investigation? Or are they just purely like checklist, hey, did you do this, did you do this, did you do this, with just yes or no answers? Because that's not helpful, right? So now we go to the part 4, compliance training. Look, compliance is key, especially if you live in a place like New York where they take their training very seriously, especially with sexual harassment and discrimination. So look, you look at training in a couple of lights, right? In at least 3 lights. You look at training in one in terms of structure. Is it supported? Is it something that's reinforced on a regular basis? Is it provided to all employees? Is it actually done by qualified individuals? Or maybe, you have a third party like we mentioned before. Do they have some kind of training that is used by everybody? Is it live? Is it interactive? Does it really get its point across? Is it modified as necessary as laws change? Because if you still, what's really funny is I can't remember the cartoon, but it was civil rights a coming. So if that's the kind of reporting material, that kind of training material, you're probably a little outdated. You probably should update that. The second portion is going to be, the content of the training. Does it talk about the illegal practices? Does it describe it? Is it tailored to the specific workforce that you're speaking to? Is it tailored to a specific company? If it's a totally unrelated training, is it really like helpful for the employees, right? So it's really not. So that's a question you want to ask. Does the training explain consequences? What can happen? Can you get fired? Can you get terminated? Can you get suspended without pay? Suspended with pay? All those kind of questions. It really should disclose everything because that's really important. And then on top of that, you want to, like we'd mentioned, does the compliance training, does it tell you how to do it? Does it tell you who the first line managers are? Who's the first line of defense? Who do you got to report to? Is it easy to understand? Again, we've mentioned this. It's got to be easy to understand. It's got to be in a language that people speak. It can't be written by a scholar. It's got to be written by just a normal bro, a normal girl, a normal guy, speaking to the normal girl, normal guy. That's how it's got to be. And then you have your odds and ends. So you have your fifth portion of this, which is going to be your odds and ends. You want to clearly identify your timetable of events. This is going to provide the story for your narrative, which is very important. Date you were hired, date you disclosed a disability, date you were prompted to disclose a disability versus the date you really disclosed a disability. What happened after you disclosed it? Did you get an adverse reaction? Did you get a bad reaction immediately? Like, what does that look like, right? So that's all important. Explain the specific conversations that you've had concerning it. Emails are always going to be best. If you have any emails, make sure you get those emails in. That's important. I think I've been telling people, especially during this whole vaccine thing, is that emails are key. You need to have emails. It's all going to be based on proof. So that's really important. How other employees who are similarly situated treated. That's very important. Okay, because at the end of the day, if you have a discrimination claim and you're saying, no matter what the discrimination, whether it's religious, whether it's gender, whether it's sexual discrimination, whether it's harassment, disability, no matter what the context is, you always want to look at similarly situated people that are outside of the class you're alleging. So let's say you're saying let's say you're alleging a disability discrimination. You want to see how they treat people without your particular disability versus how they treat people who have disabilities. Even if it's religious, you want to see how they treat non-religious people, how you treat secular people versus how you treat religious employees, because that's going to be big. So your comparatives are very important. Your similarly situated comparatives are very important. Performance issues, I always tell people, make sure you have no performance issues. It's all too easy to say, yes, we terminated you because, in 1995, you did something naughty. And we've just been holding it in all this time. Very easy for them to do and say. How's it work in practice? Obviously not so much, but still, you want to make it as difficult as possible. You don't want to make their job easier on what they're doing. Explore other incidents in terms of what you're dealing with. So for instance, do you feel you were retaliated against? Do you feel that after you disclose something, the adverse reaction occurred? Was it really more so retaliation and less of whatever kind of discrimination, whatever the case is? Like, explore your different options, because there could be many, you can get many bites of the apple by exploring different options. And then finally, you need to really go through how your disability interacts with your work performance. What we're really asking here is, can you perform your essential functions now that you're disabled? Could you have performed them before the disabling condition? Can you perform your initial functions with an accommodation? All this stuff is relevant. All this stuff is important. So that's my checklist. I hope you were following me. Again, our publisher, Isaac, is fantastic. He will set up something for you to write everything for you here. For those of you that are not taking notes, or maybe I'm speaking a little weird, so he'll have that for you. And listen, obviously you have tons of material here. Do whatever you want to do with it. Use it however you want to use it. We're always here to help. You can always reach out to us if you ever need an assist. At the end of the day, we're here to help all of you, and we understand the situation. Here at Melody Law, we kind of understand the situation, what's going on out there, and it's really wild. And I don't know how to respond to all your questions, but I'm just hoping that I can give enough free information here to give you that level of comfort and that level of confidence that when you are defending yourself, you at least have a good sense of where you need to be. You feel confident, you feel strong, and only through that confidence will you be able to prevail. You may not win at that moment, but you'll win down the road. like a Southern lawyer once told me, when you have the facts, you pound the facts. When you have the law, you pound the law. When you don't have nothing, you pound the table. And that's how you got to keep thinking. Get as many facts as you can, get as much law on your side, and you're just going to wing it. So look, I wish you all the best. As always, yours in laws, love, and lifts. If you need me, I'm here. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you go to the newsletter and do all kinds of cool and fun stuff. All right? Have a beautiful night. Take care. Later, out.